Hello, everybody. I'm Coach Wild. I am your host of the podcast, Awaken with Laura and Wild, and this is episode number 36. So, welcome back. Today is January the 7th of 2025, and I'm trying to get back into the routine of putting out a podcast on Mondays. However, the holiday and the weird week that I heard an influencer say that made me laugh, which was Coachella, the week between, Christmas and New Year's was Coachella. Um, is like a bit of a void space. I have three kids. I'm a single mom. It's crazy. So trying to get back into these rhythms and routines. And that's a bit of what we're going to talk about today. If you're new here, I am an astrologer and I'm also a coach. And so I utilize the lens and the practice of astrology to create solutions for people to live, whatever their life is. And so it means you have to be relatively open-minded to benefit from it. But at the end of the day, the source, like the way that I'm looking through, the lens through which I'm looking is through the lens of astrology. And the reason for that is because astrology is the language of energy and consciousness. It allows us to very much see the metaphysical weather, if you will, and allows us to make good, wise choices, really. And any astrology that doesn't create empowerment and consciousness around how to make wise decisions, I'm not in support of. I'm not a big fan of believing that your stars fate you into anything. I believe that we have astrology in the age of Aquarius to create awareness and therefore choice. And choice is such a huge privilege that we have, is to be able to make choices. At least that's what I tell myself as a native Libra. When I have two things that I have to decide between, I constantly remind myself that having a choice is a privilege, because I know my female ancestors had no choice. They just had to do it. And so what a lucky thing for me to be able to experience choice. And I'm actually going to do a whole pod on just that. But for right now, let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to talk about for today. So over the break, my kids taught me this term called crash out or crashing out. It's part of like the brain rot alpha generation era. And it means like you're going to have basically like a meltdown. I'm speaking millennial. And I'm like, oh, we call that a meltdown. And they're like, yeah, that's called crashing out. And it got me on this topic of talking about different kinds of cars with my kids. And then I had a meeting today with a fellow entrepreneur and creative, and we were talking about literally this. And so I wanted to just bring it forward to you guys and share some value around it that will hopefully support you and the beginning of your 2025. So if you guys don't know it, I already did this big, astrology 2025 webinar, and you can utilize that. You can access that by joining a different part of my list. I haven't figured out which funnel I want to use that for quite yet, to be totally honest with you guys and transparent, which I try to be. But I talk a lot about all of the aspects that are coming up in 2025 that are going to really encourage everyone to be brave and to take action, even if you're afraid. And that is because so many aspects are happening in the very early degrees of Aries this year. And Aries is the initiator. It is ambitious. It says, I'll do it first. Follow me. It's literally the first zodiac sign. So this is a year of initiation, essentially, to take the initiative towards something that you're afraid of. Aries and all the fire signs are very much about tackling things that you're afraid of. They're about bravery and leadership and creativity and inspiration. And so those might be some of the themes that you recognize are very necessary for you, especially in quarter one and quarter two of 2025. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some of this, like what the heck we're talking about with cars. Okay. So I remember back in the day when I was still an evangelical Christian in the church, my pastor at that time, I don't like him. He's a total narcissist, but he said a couple of things to me over the 6, 7 years that I was at that church that were very, number one, very true. And number two, very, I've looked back on them many, many times and seen them as wisdom. And one of them that he said to me was, Lauren, the devil knows that he cannot hold you back, but he sure as heck can push you forward. And that is true. And I have an Aries moon. So I feel like I can talk a lot about all this Aries energy that's coming through right now. Also, at the time of this transmission that I'm teaching right now, the moon is at 29 degrees of Aries, exactly square Mars retrograde at 29 degrees of Cancer, just so you guys know. So the moon is like at its peak energy, 29 degrees right now at the time of this recording. And what he meant by that was that I was not going to be a person that was going to be held back, but my problem was going to be trying to tackle too many things too fast without thinking too much. And he was right about that. The other thing that he would say to me very often that I look back on is that he told me, Lauren, you are like a Ferrari. You are not a Camry. You're a Ferrari. And a Ferrari requires very expensive gasoline. It requires a garage. It requires a lot of maintenance. It requires specialized people to work on that engine and keep it in tip-top shape. And the other thing is that Ferraris, they are known for sprints and not across, the country drives, right? A Camry, on the other hand, is reliable, dependable, stable, is able to have an oil change every 5,000 miles. It's not exotic, right? And there are benefits and negatives of both. And why I share this is because, well, number one, I'm a storyteller. And number two, I tend to share from my own personal challenges and try to provide value and support for you guys from those spaces and places. And so I was having a conversation with someone today, and they were talking about, having a challenge around saying no when they know they should say yes. And, this is largely playing into the body of work that I'm working on this year. But it very much plays into the fact that our yes means no to everything else. So we have to really ask ourselves, are we saying yes to something that lines up with the vision? Or are we saying yes to something out of a sense of duty and responsibility, and maybe even possibly underneath that victim mentality, right? And how do we get empowered around that? And how do we hand that responsibility that people put on us by giving us an opportunity to answer a question and let them know, my plate is actually really full right now. Thank you so much for thinking about me, but I cannot at this time. Right. So like when we get into these places, it leads into exactly what I'm talking about with understanding, the difference between Ferraris and Camrys. And I was telling her, I'm trying to have a Camry year, but I'm not a Camry. I'm a Ferrari. And so what a Ferrari needs to get across the country is it needs a big truck with a big, trailer, and it needs to literally be carried across the country. It can't really do it itself very easily without a lot of damage, which is another symbolism and another conversation for another day. We won't get into all of that. But here is what I want to bring our awareness to today. And that is this concept of what if instead of quitting in 2025, we instead learned to rest. I'll say that again. What if instead of quitting, you learn to rest? Let that settle into your bones and your mind for a minute. What does that mean? It means that when things get hard, when there are consistent obstacles, when there are challenges that you are up against and you feel like they won't quit, it makes you want to quit. Well, what if instead of quitting, you instead said, I need to slow down. I need to take care of my body, AKA your car. and I need to rest. And from that place of sacred pause, then I'm going to do my pros and cons and my values inventory of whether or not quitting this is really the wisest option. Or if instead we need to find a middle way, and that is to learn how to rest. And that is just such a big thing that I've had to learn, and I'm still constantly learning, because the truth is that if you don't learn to rest, your body will make you do it. And as a person that got sick for half of 2024, trying to hustle, trying to survive, I will tell you that if you don't learn to rest, your body is going to make you do it for you. If you don't learn how to say no when you know you're supposed to say no, your body is going to do it for you. If you don't know how to get clear on what is the most important thing for you to be investing your time, your energy, your focus into, then you need to rest and you need to figure that out. You need to slow down and you need to think about, all right, big vision, like, what am I trying to accomplish here? Your yes means no to everything else. So if my big vision this year is learning how to be a really great storyteller, podcaster, and have a strong media presence, which that is actually one of my biggest goals this year. But I'm a single mom of 3 kids and an entrepreneur that is teaching constantly and works 9 to 5, most Monday through Friday. Where do I have any extra time to learn new skills and sit in front of a computer? So what that means is that I only have a certain amount of time. Where am I going to distribute this? And this is just a basic, general life coaching productivity question, but it's true. And to take that mundane into the mystic is to understand your energy is your currency. Where you spend your time is a currency. It's valuable. And I used to tell people in the dating world, and I say this to my friends all the time, the one resource we cannot get back is time. Do not waste my time. Okay? I won't waste your time. You don't waste my time. Let's not be time wasters. When I was doing my 200 yoga teacher training way back in the day, in like 2016 or 17, we were learning about the yamas and the niyamas, which are basically like the 10 commandments of Vedantic culture and beliefs. And one of them is asteya, and it means non-stealing. And I read this small thing that changed my life to think about time. And that was not time stealing. And the concept that when we say we're going to do something and we don't, especially when people rely on us, we're stealing time from somebody else. I think about, the very short-term failed marriage that I had with, my most recent ex. And that is like, that felt like a waste of time. Like I can't get that time back. Now, as a, conscious human being that is committed to the human experience, I choose with all of my heart and all of my hopeful intention to take that suffering and alchemize it into purpose and vision and wisdom and insight, not just for myself, but for my children and for my clientele and my students for the rest of my life. It has purpose. Okay. Suffering has purpose because I choose to make it have purpose. But to get back to my point, how we choose to spend our time is important, and it is a currency. So when we think about this through the lens of crash out culture, if you will, meltdown culture, it's because we're overcommitted, we're underpaid, we are literally drowning in late stage capitalism. All of our friends are too. Our parents are having to work too, and they can't take care of their grandkids. And we are literally living in meltdown culture. We are overstimulated all the time. Every podcast you listen to is a sensory input. That's called auditory input. Most of the people I work with are neurospicy, meaning you're somewhere on the neurodivergent spectrum. Did you know that in the same way that you can consume physical food and drink and it makes you feel full, the same happens to your sensory system? So too much talking can overflow and overstimulate your audible intake, your ability to listen. Too much visual input can overstimulate your nervous system, your eyes, your ability to process information. You can literally have a hard time digesting all of the input from your sensory experiences, and it can make you physically sick. It can also make you very confused. And that is why I am saying that instead of quitting in 2025, what if we took a sacred pause and decided to rest? What if during that period of time of deciding to rest, we could get super clear on big vision? What the hell do I want? What am I doing with my time and my energy currently? And is it getting me to where I want to be? And if it's not, then it's time for an audit, which brings me to the South Node moving into Virgo, which is the auditor. So the South Node in Virgo is going to be, and this is 18 months starting on January 11th of 2025, whenever you listen to this, it is about purging and releasing and shedding, South Node, anything that is unproductive, anything that is unnecessary, anything that is just like it's messy and it's cluttered and it's creating sickness and it's creating stress and worry. It needs to go. Okay, so Virgo is literally like the declutter of the zodiac when it's healthy. When it is not healthy, it tends to be a hoarder, actually, because Virgo is the sign of the great organization. The Virgo knows how things are supposed to be. They truly are the architects of order in the zodiac. And so when we see, the North Node moving into Pisces, this is about vision. This is about belief. And when we see Saturn in there trying to, help us harness our beliefs and make our dreams concrete, and we think about the South Node moving into Virgo and the eclipses in Virgo, we have 2 of them this year. It is like, release the things that are not productive. Release the things that are ineffective and are time wasters, whether that's people, ideas, anything that is just too much visually, audibly, or auditory, anything. Like, it is too much. You have to take all of that and audit it. Okay. And I hope that is helpful. So again, to not get too far away from our focus on the concepts of Ferraris and Camrys, there are literally thousands of makes and models of cars. I picked Camry and Ferrari because that was what was used to explain me about 10 years ago, and how that has, in a lot of times, reoriented me. And that is, I want to be a Ferrari, right? Like, I want to be a Ferrari, but in order to be a healthy and effective Ferrari, I have to take care of myself in the way that a Ferrari needs to be taken care of. And so I pulled up some articles and I wanted to share, just some of the differences between Ferrari maintenance, typical problems, and then Camry maintenance and typical problems. And then I promise we'll put a bow on it, and I will send you on your way with some homework, and hopefully it will be actually helpful to you. But that is, okay, so some of the typical things that Ferraris deal with is, number one, they require very skilled and specific maintenance workers. So you first of all, you have to pay a lot of money to get the right kind of specialized care, because Ferraris are not everywhere. So you have to find someone that is skilled and good enough to work with such an expensive, high-powered sports car. So that's first thing, is maintenance is number one, just off the bat, expensive. The next thing is, you have to have the access to really high quality fuel. You can't use crappy fuel in a Ferrari. You'll destroy your engine and it won't work anymore. So you have to be able to invest in good fuel. What does that look like for a human? Probably healthy food, right? Lots of water and hydration so you don't burn out your engine. They require very frequent oil changes that are very expensive, right? They have electrical issues, evidently, which causes corroded batteries, blown fuses, and other electrical system issues, like nervous system related transmission. So sometimes shifting gears can be difficult. particularly in their newer models, like being able to shift gears is hard. Brake malfunction. So they typically have a hard time with brakes because they're all gas. Like they're meant to go fast, so they don't have great brakes, which I think is hilarious when you think about that, like through the lens of a fire sign. So true. Um, Oil leaks. So they due to their complex engine design, oil leaks can be reoccurring programs, which means number one, you're constantly having to get your oil changed, which is expensive and exotic. So you got to have the right repair person. And you're constantly having to take care of literally like your resource to keep you moving, like your food, your water, your supplements, your sleep, all of that. Okay. Battery concerns. A dead battery can occur easily due to high electrical demands because you're like flooring it. It's a Ferrari. It's roar, you know? So they require a lot of updated batteries, and then the cost of maintenance, like I said, just to kind of bring it all back. Regardless, they require specialized knowledge to function properly. They also have to be covered because they're very expensive. So they need a garage. And not only do they need a garage, they need a dust cover. So, like, I want you to hear me when I say, like, Ferraris are awesome, but they're not for everybody. And sometimes, you know, the Ferrari makes sense, and sometimes the Camry is going to make a hell of a lot more sense, right? Now, when we look at what are some of the typical things about a Ferrari, its bigger issues tend to be more normal, conventional, right? So sometimes they can have a hard time with their power steering. Their drive belts should be inspected for cracks and excessive wear because people tend to drive them for like 200,000 miles. And then their transmission, that says that sometimes at high speeds, it has a hard time tolerating high speeds. It can have a hard time with that, which again, think about that in regards to Ferrari. And then the dashboard lights. So their lights do come on relatively frequently, whether there's anything that requires maintenance or not. It's an electrical issue. So those are like the biggest things. They recommend that you get an oil change every 5,000 miles. Okay. There are many people that know how to work on Camrys. They're very common. They get great gas mileage. They're extremely reliable. You can run them literally into the ground. And that is important. You can put 87 gas in it. They don't have to be in a garage. And it's not to say to create this massive polarity between the concept of a person that could be a Ferrari or a Camry. To be honest, I'm trying to be more like Camry. Okay. I'm really looking to the Camry to help me figure out how to be more sustainable and how to live in this world as a single mom and an entrepreneur with 3 kids. And so the goal is not to pick one or the other. The goal is to learn. The goal is to become conscious of these things and recognize, all right, what do I do with all that information? All right, so here's the practical application. I want you to think about how you're spending your time. I want you to get out your phone, and I want you to get out your calendar, and I want you to take some time to really think about, what did I spend 2024 doing? Like, even if you just go kind of month to month, like, what was the big focus? Okay. And for me, it was so much about recovering from absolute instability and chaos. I got divorced and with 3 little kids. I had to move, had to reorient. And then after that, because of the stress of it, I got sick. And I got sick for 6 months. And I had to really sit and think about whether or not my dream of doing this work and helping people professionally was going to be sustainable or not. And I had to figure out if I was going to quit or if I was going to rest and revise and get back to it. At this point, I'm very happy to say that I feel like that rest and revise was extremely important to me to get back out here. The one thing I will say is that when you experience a big rest/reset like that, sometimes you have to be open to the fact that when you come back to the thing, it may be different. It may have to change. And that change may bring stuff up in not just you, but other people around you. Okay. For me, that looked like me really choosing to step away from teaching, witchcraft professionally, and really choosing to step fully into what it means to be a coach and a facilitator and an entrepreneur, and how I am going to be able to take all of the previous work that I've done and utilize it and not throw the baby out with the bathwater. But how do I stay aligned with how my soul is calling me, how my intentions are calling me, and how do I tolerate the discomfort of other people actually expressing to me that they are very disappointed in me? And how do we deal with that, right? And here's what I can tell you. I mean, it's a process. But when we think about all this energy in Aries, right, bringing it all back to Aries, South Node in Virgo, North Node in Pisces, it is about understanding that this work, this life is mine. I get to choose who I want to spend it with. I get to choose who I want to bend for and who I don't want to bend for. I get to sit and think about all of the different ways that I can show up and be authentic, and all of the ways that I can shapeshift. And what I realized after sitting with it was that nothing was actually more important for me than for me to stay aligned and true in the way that I was being called, regardless of anybody else's opinions or frustrations or disappointments with me. I ultimately had to remind myself that their disappointment is not my responsibility. My responsibility is to manage and lead myself. Their disappointment is their responsibility to manage and move through on their own. Now, this is a great opportunity relationally where it also could be an opportunity for me to say, oh, wow, you're disappointed. Tell me about that. And that creates relationship, right? That creates a dynamic of discussion. But ultimately, I know that even if I opened up a dialogue like that, I know that I would not be willing to change the hill I'm going to die on, the business I'm standing on. And that is, you're allowed to be disappointed, and I'm allowed to continue moving towards my soul calling. Both of those two things can exist. I hope you'll come with me on this new journey. If not, then I hope that everything that I created over the last 7 years is in support to you, and that you feel empowered when you utilize it. But that version of me is no longer here, and I cannot feed the dead. I can't. I have to feed what is living and vital in me right now. So with all of that being said, to kind of take multi-themes, I want to wrap it up with a little bow. And that is, as we move into 2025, you're going to feel the intensity rising. You're going to feel, because I mean, tomorrow on the 9th, Mercury moves into Capricorn, finally gets out of Sagittarius. It's been in there since November. And Capricorn is about ambition. It's about structures, discipline, putting legs on things, concrete. Literally, it rules concrete. Buildings, business, things like that. It's going to be in there for 3 weeks, all the way through January. And it is a great time to have very structured, disciplined conversations. It's a great time to create contracts and have very clear communication that has a lot of ROI to it, truly. And so you want to think about that, because this energy is kind of like rising up and it feels very motivating. And then when we get to March, where we have the eclipses in Virgo and Aries, it's going to kind of start to feel like things are going a little sideways. And that is because certain things are meant to be eclipsed out and new things are going to be called in. But then right after that, we have Venus retrograde in Aries, and then we have Mercury retrograde in Aries. And so it's like, you may feel like all this energy that we're in right here, right now, North Node is on those degrees. What you're doing right now is going to matter by the end of March, and by the first week of May, it's going to matter, because that is where we're going to have Saturn enter 0 degrees of Aries. That's where we're going to have Venus retrograde star point. That's where we're going to have Neptune in Aries. Like this degree, like what's happening in this 2-week bracket is important, because we're going to keep coming back to it, because retrogrades require revisions. And retrogrades are not necessarily stopping points. They are revision points. They require pause. They require you to rest, to rethink it. And that is why I'm bringing all of this to your awareness, is that in 2025, I am speaking to my healers, my entrepreneurs, my visionaries, my leaders. Please hear me. And leaders is in leadership over your own life. You really have to think about whether it's time to quit or it's time to rest. Because learning when to rest instead of quitting is a true skill that everybody needs to cultivate. So think about it, at the end of the day, Camrys and Corvettes crash out in the same way. They burn up and they stop working. Okay. So they can be the most, expensive and exotic cars, or they can be the most basic car. It doesn't matter. When they stop working, they stop working. They crash out the same way. So for you, I want you to think about, like, what are the behaviors? What are the compulsions? What are the things that I'm spending not only my physical time on, but my mental time on, that is causing anxiety, that is causing stress, that is causing no outcome, just time wasting habits? What relationships do you leave and you feel exhausted because there's no reciprocity in the relationship? What career positions are you in that leave you feeling unseen, unheard, and out of alignment and purpose? Like, take time to do some inventory and then follow up with that South Node of Virgo, starts this weekend, and start decluttering the parts of your life that could lead to crash out. Start releasing the things, the commitments, the relationships, the whatevers that in your soul is like, the only reason I haven't done it yet is because I don't want to hurt so-and-so's feelings. The only reason I haven't done it yet is because of XYZ. Like, you already know it's in there. Become aware. Attune yourself to what is no longer working, and then get into alignment. Okay, those are the first 3 steps of my Awaken method. That alignment piece typically means you are removing things that are not in alignment. And that is the first step. People don't know that about manifestation. I've been teaching manifestation for 7 years. People don't know, especially in spell work, that if you want to manifest something into your life, you have to banish something first. As a matter of fact, one of the big laws is you got to banish 3 to 1. You got to get rid of 3 things to make space for one aligned thing to land. I'll close out with this last story about a couch, because this is the second time I'm talking about a couch tonight, and hopefully this is helpful to you. But years ago, I was learning about manifestation, and I wanted to manifest a couch. I really did. And so, I did my intentions, I did my visualization, I lit my candle, blah, blah, blah. Lo and behold, I found the couch that I wanted on Facebook Marketplace, and it was literally free. This person was moving and they needed to get their couch out so that they could move. And they were like, I'm bringing it to you now. Well, here's the thing. I had not prepared for my manifestation to land in my life. And therefore, my couch was inside. I had 3 small children. My husband at the time was at work. I couldn't get this huge couch out of my house and then drag a new couch in. Well, here's what happened. Shortly after they dropped off that couch in my yard, it started raining. Yeah, like it started raining, like hardcore raining. And I learned a very valuable lesson. And that is, you can manifest things, but if you don't have anywhere for it to land, where's it going to go? Right. And so what that means is that if you really have big vision, if you really have, something that you want to say yes, and you're attracting that big yes into your life in 2025, there is a true skill in being able to dissolve out and declutter out the thing that is no longer aligned, to make space for and hold space for the thing that is. And that space in between of the letting go and the calling in, that right there is called the grace period. My teacher, Daniel Delsky, calls that the Amigraha, the grace period of your spell work, of your ritual, of your manifestation. And that is the longer that you can hold out, the more you can hold your vision, the more you don't just try to fill that spot and settle, the better the manifestation is that lands on the other side if you can know your values, if you can know what you're not willing to settle for, and you can be patient and hold the vision. And that is why I always come back to the saying that my guides told me years ago. They said to me, Lauren, your yes means no to everything else. And so it is with that that I am going to close out for today. This is also going to be where I share briefly where I'm going direction-wise in 2025, and you're going to see it on social media. And that is, I'm really moving in the direction of fully owning what it means to be a coach. And you're going to see where a lot of my stuff starts saying Coach Wild or Coach Wild says, and that's because I'm just fully leaning in to being an astrology-based solution-focused coach and helping visionaries, helping entrepreneurs, creatives, healers, leaders really get clear on what their big vision is, and then help them craft and cultivate a life to get there. Because lots of people know what they want. And even more don't know what they want, to be honest. Lots of people know what they want, but they don't know how to get there. They don't know how to remove the subconscious programming. They don't know how to rewrite the narrative, all of those things. That's where I'm leaning all the way in. So I have, my coaching program, which is one-on-one coaching and Awaken. And that's it for me, guys. I'm hoping to move into speaking and book writing this year. And that's where I'm going. And I'm locked in hard. And I hope that you guys will stay with me. If you see anything anywhere start to shift to Coach Wild, just know it's the same thing. It's just, I have to do this for myself to be in alignment. Welcome to what it means to be a creatrix or a spiritual creative. But it's the same thing. I'm just really removing the fluff. I am really removing the fluff. I'm really leaning into, creating the offer of using unconventional methods to get supernatural success. And that's really it. So again, I'm going to close out for today. I hope this is helpful to you guys. I hope it has some value to you and that you're able to utilize it. Feel free to please reach out to me if you have any interest in joining my group coaching program, Awaken. We are 6 months into it. I am like dialed in, guys. I'm like, okay, this is it. We start the astrology program tomorrow. So my entire astrology program is happening, soul and synastry, and it starts tomorrow and it goes on for 6 months. So if you have wanted to learn manifestation, if you have wanted to learn what it means to be in a coven or cohort of spiritual people, if you want to, develop your spiritual gifts, get clear and aligned in your soul purpose, and have a shit ton of support doing it, I really want you to check out Awaken. It is my 6-month group coaching program. It's freaking awesome. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, then you can always add that on too. I'm going to put all of the things in the description box. Again, if this is where I leave you, then I hope that we get to reconnect next week. And I hope that you guys have a beautiful evening, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.